Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday night. Look who I have with me. 10-time Daytime Emmy winner Mark Teschner, the fantastic casting director of General Hospital, and a newly inducted Silver Circle Emmy honoree. Thank you, Mark, for being here tonight. This is great. We finally get to talk.
I'm delighted to be here. You have been, through the years, an incredible advocate and supporter of daytime, and you cover it like no one. And you really, I love that you focus both on in front of the camera and behind the camera. So when you asked if I would do this, I jumped at it. I've had such great interviews with through the years. By the way, it's 11 Emmys, but I'm not counting.
Oh, 11.
But I'm happy to be here. You're awesome.
Thank you. 11 Emmys, even more than I thought. I have to say, tell me what it was like when you found out you were a Silver Circle honoree. And I want to know, what was it like on stage the other night when they had you come out? What was that moment like for you? Was it nerve-wracking, or were you fine, or how was that?
It wasn't nerve-wracking. I don't get nervous about those kinds of things. When I got the call saying that I was being inducted, I was like numb, very happy. Took a while to process, but I was really excited. And being on stage was just a fantastic experience. You know, we all walked out, and I hadn't known any of the other people really, except for A. And we just were there as a group, and to hear what they were saying and to get a standing ovation. And the favorite part for me was looking at the General Hospital tables where they were yelling and hooting and hollering, and I could see the individual faces, and it really pumped me up. And I have to say, I did get a little choked up.
It's an amazing honor. I mean, it is really for years of excellence and service in the industry. And it was like A. Martinez, Suzanne Rogers, you, Patty Denny, so many people I've
Terry
loved.
Dobson.
Terry
Really, it was great.
It was great. It was great. And I love that Kelly Clarkson was, you remember in the interviews, was like, the General Hospital group couldn't have been a better promo for GH to have Kelly Clarkson going, this is the fun table.
That was not a paid advertisement, but the way she kept referencing it. I think the next step is we got to get Kelly Clarkson on the show. That would be pretty amazing.
You get Kelly to sing on the show, or at least get some of the actors to New York to be on Kelly Clarkson.
I would not be surprised at all if she would do that.
I bet she wouldn't. That be amazing? It's so funny. I interview so many actors from General Hospital over the years, and it 9 times out of 10, they tell me, yeah, I read for Mark Teschner. I went in to read, and I went in for the read of Joe Blow, the role of Joe Blow, and then they remembered me and they brought me back for da-da-da. It seems to me like a lot of the times, if I'm correct, these guys are not girls and guys are not coming getting the role that they came for, that you remember them. You seem to remember them and bring them in later. Is that kind of most of the percentage, or how much are on the nose? Like, this guy came in for this part and we gave him this part.
I would say at least 3/4 of the actors get the part that they came in for. But, you know, Michael, my job is to remember actors, not to forget. So if I don't remember actors who I responded to or the producers responded to for another role, I'm not doing my job. So it is not unusual that I will bring in actors down the road for a different role that they auditioned for. And sometimes we end up creating a role where the actor did not get the role that they auditioned for. I can give you a few examples. Danelle Turner did not get cast as Andre when he auditioned, but we created that role for him. Sophia Matson tested for Willow, and she ended up getting Sasha, and now is also under contract. So we got 2 contract roles out of that. Another great story is Becky Herbst, who auditioned. Well, let's see, she's been on the show some 30 odd years. She auditioned for Sarah Weber.
That's right.
Did not get that. Another actress got Sarah Weber.
That's right.
But the role was created for Becky, Elizabeth Weber. And Sarah Weber, the character, did not last long. And here we are with Becky 30 years later. So these are great examples where I always tell actors when they come into audition, you lay it out, you put it all out there, you bring everything you have to that role. You may not get the role, but if you do good work, you get remembered. And it's so true. And in daytime, you really get remembered because we can actually create space for new characters because we have 250 episodes a year. So if we spark to someone, there's the possibility that something can be created for that actor. So my job is absolutely to remember the actors that came in. You know, it's funny, at the Emmys, I was talking to Tamara Braun, who was a very successful recast for the role of Carly after Sarah Brown. She had read for me for something else years ago, and for some strange reason, an intuitive reason, I wrote down, if we ever recast Carly.
Oh
Well,
my
sure enough,
gosh.
the recast of Carly came along, and when we reached out to her to audition, she was on the verge of actually leaving the business. And we had a very long discussion about this past weekend. She was done. She was packing it in. She was thinking, I don't even want to be in town. But she came in and tested, and then her life completely changed. It changed because she's a wonderful actress, and a casting director remembered her and brought her in for something that he felt she was right for, even though she wasn't necessarily right for the role that she initially auditioned for. So you bet it happened. So that's one of the things I love about my job. If somebody leaves their mark, we remember them, and you never know what's going to come down the road. So I've already given like 3 or 4 very concrete examples of actors that did not get the role they auditioned for. And then lo and behold, years later, and sometimes it can really be years later, they get on the show.
Okay, I'm showing guys the photo of Evan Hoffer, Eden McCoy, Tabiana Ali, and Giovanni Mazza. Were they all? They all did not. I know Giovanni and Evan came for other roles, right, before getting their roles. Is that
No.
correct? No.
Evan Hoffer read for the role of Dex, and we liked him and we cast him. It was a recurring role to begin with, but the powers that be, Frank Valentini and the writers, liked him so much, they put him under contract. Eden McCoy was cast as Jocelyn when she was, I believe, 13 years old. She wasn't even the original Jocelyn. The original actress that was playing the role got a Broadway show. And since the role was not contract, she left to go to Broadway. Eden came in, and it was a stroke of luck that she came in, because now she's been on the show all of her decade, where she's grown from, the character was originally a bratty 13-year-old. What a shock. And she's grown into this beautiful leading woman on the show with great range and emotional complexity. But she started as a kid. Tabiana did actually audition for the role that she got. And the story with Gio, who plays Gio, I was casting a recurring role for a 15-year-old on the show. But when I'm doing the audition, sometimes I'll open it up because I'm willing. We try to cast true to age, really within a year or so. Because if you think about it, all the kids in our show are the exact age of the characters that they're playing. Because if you have somebody that's older playing younger, it sticks out because they're not going to blend age-wise. But I did read a number of actors that were older just because they looked interesting. And Gio's audition came in. I was viewing this through self-tapes, just like I'm viewing you. And there was just something about him. It wasn't just that he was a great-looking kid. It was just, there's something very soulful about him and something very compelling, and he brings you in. So with the group of the 15-year-olds that I sent to Frank, I said, hey, I'm including this kid, Giovanni Mazza. I'm well aware he's too old, but I just want you to see him. So Frank, that's Frank Valentini, our EP, said, you know what? When you bring the guys in, bring them in. So we brought the 15-year-olds in. It's a room full of producers. It's Frank and 3 other producers when it's a major role. And Giovanni came in and completely charmed us because he's just so present, kind. And then he did the scene, and it was very good. And we all looked at each other like, we've got to do something with this kid. And about 2 weeks later, Frank called me and said, we're putting him under contract. And so that's how that happened. So that was an example where, and it was his first week in LA. It was his first ever audition. So we got him before anybody else. And I think he's really going to develop into, quite a young actor.
I think you have such an eye for talent. Like, it's amazing when I look at the amount of people you've cast on this show that have been extraordinarily successful, either on this show initially and then gone off and done other things, or have been on the show. So he plays violin. What did you guys add that into the part then? Obviously, once
yes.
Yeah.
Because when it came into the audition, I happened to say, by the way, Giovanni, I understand you're a maestro violinist. And he was like blushing, like, yeah. And so when they realized that, it was the perfect introduction into his character. Okay, let's make him Cerullo. He can play the violin at the wedding. And so that was just a beat that they put in because it's a skill he had. And it worked as a really cool introduction to the character.
So back in the day, self-tapes became a thing. And I talked to a lot of actors that are auditioning. And now there's this whole thing, they have to make their own self-tapes and submit it for roles. And it's an extra kind of step for them. But we're now in this virtual world where originally they would probably just all come and line up and read for you, right? In the old days, right? They would come to the studio and
in the old days, which means pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID is what
actors would read, would do their pre-reads in person.
Right.
And I would schedule auditions through the day, usually about 40 actors a day, which breaks down to about one every 8 minutes. The reason is I don't want to do a cattle call where the room is packed with actors. I want to spread it out. And then if I need to work with an actor in the room, I want to create the time for that. And that's a wonderful process, connecting in the room with somebody. The self-tape process has actually created more opportunity for actors to audition because I can see many more actors for a role than I could prior to self-tapes. Now, I will always see as many actors as are right for a role for a series regular. I've seen 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 actors for a series regular. I read 1,750 actors in New York, LA, and Chicago for the 8 core cast members of Port Charles. But with the self-tape, I can see many, many more because I'm not bound by real time. I can view hundreds of auditions this weekend. And by the way, I do at times view hundreds of auditions.
I imagine.
And it gives me the opportunity to maybe see actors that I wouldn't have gotten to see. Nicholas Chavez sent his self-tape in from Florida. And then Spencer Cassadine, the rest is history. He had a meteoric impact on the show. He was in Florida when he sent his self-tape in. So it does create opportunity. And I do want to address something you said because I'm very actor friendly. And I understand actors sometimes feel, well, who's watching my self-tape? And the answer is we are watching your self-tape. The reason I set up a self-tape audition is because I'm actually looking to cast the role, or I wouldn't schedule an actor. And as far as the setup, a studio is not required. You need a good ring light, a neutral background, and somebody to read the scene with, either in person or through the computer or the iPhone. But all these jobs are getting cast through the self-tapes. They work.
You talk about Nicholas Chavez. So my question on that is, you see the tape from Florida. Did you know instantly he had the it factor? Or totally. Did you knew, like I knew. And
you can see when somebody's got it, because when you're watching that screen, when you can't take your eyes off it. So what I do is, I think for that role, I read about 450 actors. And then I send Frank what I call my producer sessions. I send him the tapes of these are the people I liked. Now, in this case, and then we bring in actors to read for Frank. He'll whittle it down from the group I send him to a smaller group to see in person. Now, with Nicholas, we didn't bring him in to see in person. He lived in Florida. We were like, we're going to test him with the group. And then we whittled it down to a smaller group. And then the test group was maybe 7 or 8 actors that tested for that. So it's a process for a series regular. It's a process.
Has there been a time when you, let's say with Frank, you don't have to say who, but is there a time when you guys don't agree and you're like, I really believe this one should have this part, but he's the producer and says we're going to go with Joe Blow? Like, does that come up where there is a dissension amongst everybody? And
No, we don't all have to agree in the room, all the producers, but at the end of the day, it's Frank's vision for the show. The executive producer makes those kinds of decisions. But if we disagreed a lot, I wouldn't be there. We're very in sync.
Right.
We're very in sync with how we see talent. And every producer has their own vision and their own taste and their own talent, but they all want the best thing for the show. So my job as casting director is to bring to the producers my taste, also knowing what they like as well, but opening it up to people that they may not have thought of, because let's think outside the box, that kind of a thing.
They're asking, I'm just trying to find this. Hold on one second. Daisy's asking, are there any actors you've cast that have over exceeded even your expectations in the role they were cast for?
Oh, well, you always have an expectation and the hope that they're going to nail it and run with it. But sure, there are actors you think, oh, they're going to be awesome, and then all of a sudden it goes to another level. Well, Nicolas Chavez, we knew he'd be amazing, but who knew? Well, we did. But yeah, Steve Burton, who was 18 when we started, Vanessa Marcel, who literally had no credits when she walked in and came out of nowhere and went from an inexperienced actress to look at that, to a powerhouse in daytime.
Yeah,
people like that. I mean, I could go on and on, but those are a couple of examples that jump out. And I have a funny Vanessa Marcel story as well, and it's a great example of how actors can psych themselves out when they shouldn't. So Vanessa came in to read for the role of Brenda. I think I saw maybe 250, 300 actresses. And it was very challenging to find that actress that embodied everything: the charisma, the presence, the sex appeal, the depth, just this indefinable, you know it when you see it kind of thing. And Vanessa was looking around the room, the waiting room. There were, I think, maybe 5 other actresses. And she thought to herself, these actresses are so beautiful, I'm never going to get this. And she got up to leave. As she was walking out of the casting office, I opened my door and said, Vanessa, it was her turn. She said she turned and saw me, and when she looked at me, she knew she was going to get the role. Something inside of her. And she was remarkable. But the point of the story is, and this is where actors can get in their heads, she looked around the room and thought, well, I'm not as beautiful as these other actresses. At that time, Prince's video was in heavy rotation on MTV. Right. The most beautiful girl in the world was the video. And Vanessa Marcel was the most beautiful girl in the world in the video. So if the most beautiful girl in the world doesn't think she's pretty enough and is about to leave, it's just a great example of actors getting in their way. And thank God I opened the door when I did.
I love Vanessa. I thought she jumped off.
But that's an example of somebody that really kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Mike M is asking, I love the diversity of the cast. Do you think we'll ever see an overweight male actor on daytime TV? It's an interesting question, because obviously there'd have to be, I mean, soap guys all look one way, I think is what he's trying to say.
Well, if you look at General Hospital, we have all shapes and sizes. We have diversity in terms of both ethnic diversity, but also physical diversity. There's a real look to the show that's very contemporary. My response would be, I don't see why we wouldn't have a male character that would be overweight. If the role makes sense, where we were looking for who's the best actor for this role, why wouldn't we? We want the show to reflect the world as it is, not this romanticized version of what people thought soaps were 40 years ago. The whole chisel thing. If you look at soaps from 40 years ago to now, there's a wide range of what's considered romantic leading woman, character. I always say General Hospital is a show where there's room for everybody.
So I was just talking with Mara West on the red carpet, one of the greatest ever. When a role like Ava Jerome came up in that regard, is that something that it's automatically going, who you want for that role?
When that role came up, here's how it went. Frank said, I want Maura West. And Maura West was there. That's how it goes. Because with certain roles where there are known actors available that can step in and play those roles, their track record, they can deliver, we will offer those roles out.
Is there ever been a role that was like you wanted a name, couldn't get the name, and then you had to come up with a new actress, somebody who has not been on a show before? Like if you couldn't get,
that's a good question. I've never been told we need to get a name for this role.
Oh, interesting.
So for roles, you'll see a lot of names in the roles, but in conjunction, there were other actresses or actors that were considered for that role that weren't necessarily names.
Interesting. Now,
for example, Linda Pearl did a great 6-episode arc on the show, and she's a name.
Right.
And we kind of honed in on her, but we discussed, and I sent Frank a number of actresses, their body of work for him to look at, to consider. And I think it was who's the best actress for the role. Linda Pearl also just happened to be a name, but I've never felt the pressure that it has to be a name. But there are some roles where you get them and you're thinking, there's a lot of name actors and actresses available that would be great in this role. And they also bring name value. But if you cast an actor based on their name without them being right for the role, it's a waste.
I talked to Kimberlyn Brown as one example of an actress in Daytime, and she was talking about her audition. And Bill Bell at the time came over and gave her a note, or one of the producers did in the audition, do this to try to get them to change up how they were doing their reading or their character. Do you do that as well? Give a note to an actor to try to get them into give you what they're looking for?
I'll give a note if they need an adjustment.
Right.
When John Lindstrom read for Kevin and Ryan, some 25, 30 years ago, whatever it was. I've been there 34 years, so sometimes whether they've been on 30 years or 25, but he read for the role, and the audition scene had kind of both sides, and he finished leaving, and the producers at the time and the network exec were like, it was really good, but I don't know, he didn't seem to have the danger on that side. I said, well, he's a really good actor. He was also my first choice for the role. I said, he can do it. Why don't we have him do it again and ask him? They go, great idea. Well, he'd already left the building. So somehow I called the front gate, and they stopped him as he was leaving the lot. They got him. He turned around. He came up and said, let's do it again, but bring a little more edge and intensity to the second half. And he did. And, the rest in his case is history. He's been on the show so long. So I do give adjustments. Fortunately, I was able to give him that adjustment before he left the building. But if there's an actor that I feel really has a possibility and they're really right for the role, I'll give an adjustment before they come in to read for the producers, because it's really the producers that make the call if they want to see an adjustment. But I'll, in the audition process, make the adjustment.
I want to talk to you about Johnny Wachter. And we all are just so in mourning and grief-stricken over his murder. And I remember I talked to him so many times, and he was such a lovely, sweet, good man, which made this whole thing just more horrific. But what do you remember about him reading for you, or what do you remember about his audition, or how he came into your purview?
With Johnny, what you see is what you get. You see the most kind, decent, stand-up guy. And that's innately who he is. So that quality comes through in his work and with the character. And, Brando was a raw kind of hothead, troubled kind of character, and he was able to go there. He has a real intensity that he was able to bring to the role. But at the same time, the character of Brando has to have this depth and this giant heart that he doesn't necessarily reveal when you first see him. Well, Johnny has the biggest heart of anyone you'll ever meet, as you know. So that essence was already there. And then his acting and his skill played the character, but he brought so much of who he is to the character. And there was something so authentic about him.
I just remember the whole scene. And that was my other question. Do you actually have time with your job? Can you watch the episodes of GH? Do you follow along?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a TV in my office.
Okay.
I watch the show every day. But I also have the monitor where I'm watching the taping every day. So when I'm in my office, the taping is on in the background where I'm watching them tape scenes. And I really pay attention to the taping of the scenes when it's either an actor that's just started and I want to watch them as they're getting into their groove, or a day player or somebody new that hasn't been on the canvas for years. That's when I really focus on watching them do the taping. I don't need to watch Maura West and Cynthia Watros go at it in the taping to know it's going to be amazing on the screen. So I'm more inclined to focus on newer actors, younger actors, people that are on the show for a day, 2 days, 3 days, that kind of a thing.
What happens in general? Let's say Frank or you feel, you're watching them work, you're watching them tape, and you need to recast. Who you thought would work is not working. What happens at that point? Is it like you just got to go back, or how much time do you give somebody, or do you work with them at all, or kind of what happens?
There's no timetable on how much time we give somebody. Most of the recasts are because the actor chose to leave,
Right.
rather than we chose to have the actor leave. Fortunately, that doesn't happen a lot. When it does, it's always a terrible feeling. It's just, you think it would have been the right fit, and for whatever reason, it doesn't make sense. So then the recast comes, and we might go in a different direction with that recast. But most of the recasts are an actor that's been popular and on the show for years that wants to leave the show and move on. And I always say recasting is my least favorite thing, because in some ways it's the most challenging thing. You want to bring in an actor that can make the role their own. You're not looking for a cardboard recreation of what went before, because really, how can you recreate what another actor did? So you're looking for somebody that can still bring the essence of the character that's been established for the past 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, but at the same time makes it their own, brings their own spin on it, their own talent, their own energy, their own essence to create a new version, but that's not so far left field that you're jolting the audience. And I think maybe the greatest example would be Laura Wright, who was not the first or the second Carly and made it her own and has played it longer than anyone. And there's probably people watching who don't even realize there were other Carlys, because she made it her own, and her essence is different than Sarah Brown, and their essence is different than Tamara Braun, but they each were compelling Carlys in their own right, and they made it their own.
They're asking, there's a question from TMJ Lakin. What happened to the actor playing Portia's brother? I think they mean Gavin Houston.
Yeah, I love Gavin.
I love Gavin Houston. I've always thought he was great.
And I was really excited when we brought him on the show. And I thought he brought a lot to the show. I don't know what happened. We bring in a lot of characters, and sometimes they stick around and sometimes they don't. But I actually can't give you a reason that he's not on the show.
What about Michael Lerman is asking, what about Nicholas Cassidy? Now, that has been very interesting for you, I'm sure. You had Tyler, who was amazing, and then Marcus came in, and then Adam has been playing him. So how has that all process been for you to try to get the essence of Nicholas? And, Tyler was so defining in that role, and then you have to go, figure this out from a casting perspective. It has been challenging.
It's just not easy. Tyler was indelible for people. He, very unique human being, unique actor. He created the role. And when he was no longer on the show, Marcus came in and brought his own spin. And then Marcus, after I think 3 years, he left. And then Adam's come in and he's done a great job. And they're all very different. And you can't recreate what went before. You just try to bring in someone that you feel can bring their own spin and create a role that's going to be memorable. And for example, Adam and Marcus have very different qualities and sensibilities. Right. They're night and day, just in terms of their essence and their presence.
I know but you have to kind of get somebody that will bring the essence of the character, even though they're completely different in their delivery and the way they may look.
You do, but they're going to make it their own. It's still the same thing. Nicholas has to have intensity. He's got to have great soulfulness. He's a Cassadine. He's carried this legacy. He's in pain. He's tormented. And each actor brought their truth to it in their own way.
In the case of Eva LaRue, who's on the show as Natalia, that was, again, we need a mother. It was a name that you brought in, I'm assuming.
Well, Frank said, I want Eva LaRue for it. I saw the character in the outlines. I get outlines in advance. So I'll know 2 months in advance what is coming up so I can start processing it, thinking about it, and casting it. And I remember going into Frank and saying, Frank, so what are we looking for Blaze's mom? I mean, I knew what we were looking for, the idea of it. He said, we're looking for Eva LaRue. That's who I want. And so he was a friend of mine. So that was a quick me sending her a text. Hey, you want to be on General Hospital in this great role? And, that happened very quickly.
When you look at Josh Swickard and you cast him.
I did.
Right. For Chase.
Now, he auditioned for another role, and all the guys we were auditioning for were mid to late 30s. But I had brought him into Frank, and Frank was like, I think we should just test him anyway, because there's something about him. Let's just have him test. So the poor guy's up in Temecula, up shooting a movie, like a Lifetime kind of movie. And he finishes taping at 4 a.m., gets in his car, and drives like 3 hours to the studio to test that day. I think he slept in the dressing room. He was looking at the material right until the talent test, because he couldn't really work on it because he was shooting a movie. Right. So it's not like he had the time to, let me go in my trailer and work on the material. And he was just not at all right for the scene that we had, but he was really good. In fact, I remember Finola coming up to me because she was in the scene and saying, this kid's good. And there was a little buzz like, oh yeah, we got to do something with him. And then it kind of went away. And then 6 months later, we want to put Josh Swickard under contract. So, people remembered. And then the right thing came up.
I have so many actors, and tell me if this is true. Maybe you know, so many actors will tell me, I read with, let's say, with Finola, I read with Josh. And then they will say, and then I gave my opinion to who I thought was the best that read with me. Like they'll tell somebody, castingers. Do you ever listen to what the actors who will be working with them?
We don't really necessarily, if we're curious to know what the actor thinks, who they felt comfortable with, but that's not what makes the final decision, because we see things watching the audition that the actors who are in the scene with them don't necessarily see.
Right.
So because when you're in it in the moment, you're not seeing the big picture or the essence or the quality that we're looking for. So we certainly ask people's opinions, but the decision at the end of the day is going to be Frank's and the networks and the writers for a series regular role. Not the actors don't make the decisions.
John is asking, and this is a good question, the Jagger Cates recast, Adam Harrington. So you go with Adam, and then were you just looking for a 180 on Jagger or was Adam, had you seen Adam previously? And
Adam had read for us before, along with a lot of other guys. And then when the Jagger role came up, the decision was we liked him when we saw him before. So I'm not sure what the decision was in terms of let's make a 180 on that. But he did not read specifically for that role, but that's the role that he was offered.
And what about him did you like that you thought resonated on screen?
He's a really good actor. He's got a really strong presence. He can be charming, but can bring a lot of edge to the character.
Who do you
Charles
like?
Major.
I love Charles. He's so good.
I remember I'd been trying to get, I'm just thinking of actors that read around the time period.
Yeah.
I remember I'd been trying to get him in to read for the show for like 4 years. And finally he was like, oh, okay, I'll come in. And he just like blew the room away. He read in the room. It was a recurring role. He read in the room with Laura Wright, and it was just electric what was going on between them. And he left and we're like, oh boy, this guy, it's like this incredibly seasoned actor, but he's a new face. We loved him. And he in turn was like, I can't believe how good that Laura Wright was. Like one of the best actresses I've ever been with. So he was blown away, just like we were blown away by him. And now he loves being on the show. He has said to me that Finola and Laura are two of the finest actresses he's ever worked with. And this is a man with, 30-year career. And they're incredible, the scenes with him and Finola. But that's an example of lightning in the bottle. You can't fake chemistry. It's either there or not. And it's off the charts, the chemistry. Two incredible actors doing this kind of a dance. And when the magic happens, you run with it.
So he came in for Brennan or a different role?
For Brennan.
For Brennan. He's great. I mean, just great. So where in you did you figure out along the way, I am good at this?
Oh.
Is it 11 Emmys in or no? But I'm just saying, when did you realize, like, okay, I have a career in this. I'm really good at this. And you enjoy it.
I truthfully don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that the day I started casting, which was like October 1982 in New York, I knew that I loved it. I wasn't thinking, am I good at it or not? Because I really hadn't done any casting, but I had a background as an actor. So I knew the language of the actor. I knew what good acting was. Certainly that's a baseline for being a casting director. You better know what good acting is, but there's so much more into it. There's an intuitive process, who's right for the role, your gut feelings. I don't know when I realized I was good at it. All I know is that from day one, I loved it. And when I started, just like an actor starting out, I was making no money for years in New York. And there were some lean years. As you know, you're starting out and you're building a career. But I can tell you this, I'm a better casting director now than I've ever been, because I've been doing it. But I'm definitely a better casting director now than when I started on General Hospital in 1989. Because I've really become immersed in the talent that's out here. I've become more skilled at seeing things that maybe I wouldn't see when I first started out, picking up on the essence, the sensibility, the vibe of an actor. But the process has never changed for me, which is finding the most dynamic, interesting actor for that role. And for new characters and young characters, the process has never changed. Keep looking till you find it. So you can never in casting become complacent. Oh, well, this guy's going to be good enough. That doesn't cut it, especially on a show like General Hospital, which is a real legacy show. You've got to look to find the people that are going to take what's on the page and bring it to life. Are they going to be interesting and compelling in a way that the audience is going to want to watch them week in, week out, day in, day out, be moved by them, be challenged? So I'm better now than I've ever been, but my mandate has never changed. And the process for me hasn't changed, which is my job is to, I'll tell you what my job is. I'll give you an image. I love sports.
I do too.
So ABC. So we're the New York Yankees. ABC owns the team.
Yeah.
Frank Valentini's the manager.
Right.
And I'm the GM. I'm responsible for finding the talent.
Right.
So as a GM, I've got to bring in proven veterans with a track record, but you build the team by bringing in rookies and new faces with the potential to become superstars. That's kind of my mandate with the show. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's exactly it. It makes complete sense. You have to have the foundation of these other, and then you get the big stars, the big money, the big stars like in baseball or whatever. And then you've got your rookies and your mainstays that.
And you create a team.
You create a
team. And you want that team to win a championship and be a watchable team where the audience is watching this team. Yeah.
When you look back at GH and you look at like Michael Sutton and Kimberly McCullough in the HIV storyline, Jackie and Christina Wagner in Barbara Jean, the BJ death, all of those. Are those the iconic moments that you remember as an actor watching or as a casting director watching, going, they were just so incredible? Like, what strikes you?
Absolutely. I think the iconic moments that the audience feels are iconic are very much the same moments that I feel are iconic. It's just, you can't create an iconic moment. You tell a story, and certain stories grab an audience, and the audience can't shake it, and you have the right actor and the right actor telling it. Michael Sutton did an incredible job with the character of Stone. He was on for a few years. He did not really have much experience when he started. And he screen tested with 6 other actors. One of them had won 2 Emmys. Others had done primetime series. He was the least experienced of the 7 actors. And he booked the role and ended up being magnificent. The death scene, I see you, Robin, those lines. But that's also a good example for the actors, where you go in a room and you're looking around the waiting room and you might recognize this actor or that actor, but you can't psych yourself out about it, because here's the deal. They're auditioning the same as you. If we had the role cast, we wouldn't be bringing them in, and we wouldn't be bringing you in. So it really is a level playing field when you're getting that opportunity. And that's the beauty of it, because if an actor has something magical or the skill or the craft to bring it to life, it doesn't matter who they're competing with. I always tell actors, you're not competing with anybody. You're there to just make it your own and see what happens.
I have so many actors to say something very similar, like, I went to this audition and the same group of guys is at the same one. We're always at like we're all at the same one over and over and over and over again. And I think sometimes it gets in their head. Maybe sometimes it doesn't. But it definitely gets in their head, because you can tell kind of in the conversation. With Michael Sutton, I did a 25-year reunion of that storyline interview with Kimberly McCullough and Michael on this YouTube.
Wow.
It was the greatest. It's on my channel. And Michael,
I'm gonna watch that.
You have to watch it. I'll send you the link. It was really phenomenal. And Michael said, I really had the greatest role ever. He said, I knew that nothing could ever really top that role that I had, that I got the opportunity to play. So I don't feel the need that I have to go out and, try to act, even though he's doing his other life right now. But if there was a role, he really doesn't feel compelled, because he feels the greatest role he could possibly have was Stone and that storyline and what it meant to people. And he was the, epicenter of it. And just to hear him talk about it was just amazing. He's still so passionate about that role.
that was a perfect storm of writing, storyline, actor, creating, magic. And that's what, we're trying to do it. We don't necessarily get magic 250 episodes a year, but we have plenty of magic and stories that build to that. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be on the air for 61 years. And for actors that have auditioned for me, there are the moments of the magic where you found it. And it's an incredible feeling as a casting director to feel like, oh yeah, we've got it. Like a great example would be Rena Sofer when she screen tested for Lois. It was lightning in a bottle. I mean, and she was amazing in the role. And from the day she started, was a powerhouse. And it's funny because I gave Rena her first job when she was 17 years old, the series regular on Loving. She played
Rocky. Yep.
And after her first audition, she left and she came back into my office crying. I was terrible. I was awful. Could I do it again? And I said, well, you can do it again, but I'm bringing you in for my producers next week. And then she got the role. And then she did great. And she moved out to LA. And then this role of Lois came up. And again, we auditioned hundreds of actresses, not an easy role to find. This Brooklyn chick with eccentric but colorful, but not a cartoon, with great heart and depth. And I remember going to dinner with Rena, taking her to dinner to convince her to screen test for the role because she didn't want to do another soap. And I was like, you don't understand. This is General Hospital. It's a different kind of beast. It's an iconic show. It's a great role. It's a different opportunity for you. And so she ended up screen testing and got the role. And when we were watching the screen test, it was just like, well, there you have it. And there were 8 actresses that tested for that role.
And I can't imagine anybody else, right? Well,
you can't imagine anybody else playing that role.
Leslie Kay played her for a while, right?
Was that?
Didn't Leslie Kay come on the
show? Leslie came on for a year, right. Correct. Yeah. Something like a year.
Right. So, yeah. Were you ever a fan of soap operas when you started, or you had no clue or didn't care?
I wouldn't say I was a fan, but I certainly had watched soap operas and was very familiar with them because I grew up on the East Coast. So General Hospital was on at 3:00. So it would be like after school, General Hospital would be on in the background. I didn't necessarily watch it because I'd be out like playing sports or drums.
That's right.
I was the world's worst drummer, but I was very familiar with soaps. I remember in the background hearing The Ice Princess. I had no idea what. Oh, I remember Dark Shadows. I would watch that and Barnabas and the Vampires. So yeah, I was very familiar with them. But really, I cut my teeth casting Loving from 85 to 89 in New York, which in turn led to General Hospital. So by the time I was doing General Hospital, I was well versed in the world of daytime.
You had done Loving and you had done Port Charles. Or what was the order?
The order was Loving from 85 to 89.
Right.
Then being moved out to LA to do General Hospital. And then in 97, so I started General Hospital 89, and then 97 creating Port Charles, but casting Port Charles. And the real ironic twist to the whole Port Charles thing was when I flew back to do the auditions in New York for Port Charles, I was working out of my old office at Loving, which had been canceled, to make room for Port Charles. So it was just very surrealistic. So that's the order: General Hospital, Port Charles from 97 to 2003. And then after that, we had the 2 seasons of Night Shift, which were the 13-week episodes. So you could say there were like 2 spin-offs of General Hospital, Night Shift and Port Charles.
Right.
All very different in their own right.
What was it like when they were like telling you, okay, so on Port Charles, we're going to do this vampire thing now. Like we're going more towards that way. You're casting this. And did Michael Easton have to audition for this role, or did you go for him because he had already been on Days as Tanner Schofield? And then I'm trying to remember do you remember?
I know he had done Days, but he hadn't been on the show for a while. He'd done other things.
Right.
I know he was I'm trying to remember. I know he was the guy we wanted.
Yeah.
I think we got him to come in and audition. I think we had to do some arm twisting, but there was like nobody that could touch him as Caleb the vampire. It was just because he's got such a dark, brooding, mysterious essence, and you
Anyways.
can't act that. Otherwise, you're posing. And so innately, he was right for Caleb before you get into the fact that he actually is a really good actor. So I don't remember ever considering anybody else, but I believe he auditioned for it, at least, or either we offered it or he auditioned. But it was like he was always like, high on the radar for that. And that was Kelly Monaco's first gig, Livy.
Now, how did that come about? Did you cast, how did it come about that you cast her?
She had read for other things, and then I brought her in for the producers of the network. And it was sort of, she's raw, but there is something watchable. And she had, at the time, because she was, a kid, this beautiful, there was this innocence and yet knowingness at the same time. It's hard to explain. It's just a quality. And she was perfect to be matched with him. It was really just a fortuitous combination that was put together. It was crazy, making the shift from all of it, your Grey's Anatomy, basically, before there's Grey's Anatomy, and then all of a sudden it's a vampire series. But that was an effort by the network to change the format, mix it up, and kind of mirror the 13-week
telenovela kind of
format, which I don't believe has ever successfully worked on daytime. I know that people have tried before, but that was an effort to try to mix it up and honestly try something new, and I respect that.
And so when Sam McCall came around, she was just cast, correct?
Yeah, she was just cast.
Yeah, because she was Kelly Monaco.
She was just cast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like that. Which is interesting because some characters come to the show and they stay the same characters, and others come to the show and they're new characters. But I'm not part of that process. Those are decisions made by writers and producers.
And so what we know for the general public and what they understand is when you have sides that go out or you're in the breakdown and you're looking for actors, you never put the real role. You say it's Justin, but you're really casting Bob.
Yep.
Right. I mean, and that's just so nobody knows what's going on. Right.
Yeah, because in daytime, you need to have the element of surprising the audience. And the moment something gets out, they're casting Brenda's sister or they're casting Becky's father. The moment that gets out, you've already taken the element of surprise out of it. So the audition will be for the character, but the names have been changed because we don't want.
Right.
So like you could be auditioning for the role of Brennan, but you're not auditioning with Carly. You're probably auditioning with Charlie. Or whatever. So yeah, I randomly make up these names and choose them because and sometimes I just say, I was watching the show on YouTube and I couldn't find this character. I said, I know, because the character doesn't exist. I said, because you don't need to be familiar with the storyline to audition for the show. I think when an actor's auditioning for a show, if it's a show that's on the air, it's always a great idea to watch a couple of episodes to get a feel for the show. But you don't need to know the characters to do a great audition, to know the storylines that involve that character to do a great audition. But, every show has a different feel and a different vibe. So, if you're auditioning for Mad Men, it's got a very different feel than if you're auditioning for General Hospital. Grey's Anatomy has a different feel. You're not when you're auditioning, you're not trying to recreate the feel of the show, but it helps just on an intuitive level to have a feel for what the show is and what the characters are like.
I've had so many actors will tell me, yeah, I read for the role of Joe, and then I got the part, and that's when they told me I'm actually playing da 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 da. And then they're like, I freaked out because I know because some of them know the show. So then they're like, oh God, I'm playing Joe, Jason's brother, I don't know, and they're like, oh my God, they have this oh my God moment. And a lot of people tell me this in the story when I interview them of how they got the part.
Very
And it's
true.
that light bulb, and then they go, and then I went on YouTube and I looked at it. So I think it's even for
Totally.
them, they don't really know until they really know, right? Unless
Kind
you're
of, yeah. Kind of, yeah. Although when we were casting Spencer, Frank did say in the room to the 7 or 8 actors that were screen testing, so you're reading for the role of Spencer, and Laura's your mother, even though it doesn't say it in the script. So we gave them some idea before the screen test.
Are there roles that you think could never be recast? For instance, people are asking, would you ever recast Robin? Like, but that's such an iconic role. And Kimberly sort of, I mean, could you think anybody could be recast in a role if needed for story to service the story? Or do you think it does a disservice and nobody would accept it? Or
I don't think you could recast Luke, Tony Geary, Maurice, Sonny would be challenging. 30 years of indelible work on the show. I mean, I think there's some actors like that where it would be very challenging to rock the audience with a different actor playing those roles.
mm-hmm.
Not just because they've been on the show for such a long time, but because of their Luke and Laura, their iconicness, things like that. So hopefully I don't have to think about stuff like that.
Hopefully you don't have to deal with that.
Well, exactly.
What are you most proud of this entire journey you've been on? Is it the longevity you've had, or the community that really has embraced you?
I appreciate that.
So many of us love you. I mean, I hear nothing but love from so many actors about you, and I interview most of them at one time or another. And you are so beloved by them. And for a casting director to be beloved is right, because a lot of times there's that adversarial thing, like, oh, I gotta go to the casting director, and he's trying to throw me under the bus. You don't know. But I think from what I understand, you want the actors to do well. You're looking for the right person. You're not there to make their life hell, even though
what makes life hell is when I can't find the actor that's right for the part. That's my hell. And there are times where you really feel like I'm not finding it yet, and you keep looking. But I will answer your question, but I want to address something you said, because I do want actors to hear it. I think that what's important for actors to understand is that the casting director is actually your friend. We are so rooting for you. You are the answer to the puzzle. You are the missing puzzle piece that we're trying to put together. If we had the role cast, we wouldn't do the auditions. The best feeling in the world is feeling like you've got some choices that you really like. The worst feeling as a casting director, you've seen hundreds and hundreds, and you know that on a gut level, you haven't yet found it. The casting director is rooting for the actor. And by the way, this is not just Mark Teschner saying this. I'm friends with a ton of casting directors, and we all feel the same way. We are hoping the actor's good. So when you walk in the room, keep in mind, we're not there to say no. We're there to say yes. Now, I'm not naive. There are some people you walk in and maybe the room isn't warm and fuzzy, and you don't feel like, I can't do my best work. I'm not getting much warmth. They're still watching you, hoping you're what they're looking for. So I think if an actor really understands that we're on the casting director is your friend, we're on your side, it can go a long way to an actor feeling empowered when they walk in that room. And that's really what I've always tried to do, is create a space when the actor comes in, just be warm and engaging and present. And then we do the scene. They all read with me. I'm my reader. And we do the scene. And then it's very much, thank you so much. Or if I need to see it again, I'll ask. But the whole idea is to be warm and present so the actor feels, okay, I'm being supported here. So there's nothing blocking them from doing good work. So I guess an answer to your question is, it's very heartening to feel people appreciate that. You know, I feel like I want to change actors' lives. Sometimes I'll read an actor, they're new and you just feel like I don't think they're going to be very successful. You could, because I read thousands of actors a year. I've read, if I've cast 9,000 episodes of General Hospital, I've read tens of thousands of actors. But even an actor that's not good or green or whatever, I'm going to be nice to them because here's why. I may be the only experience they ever have auditioning. So it might as well be a good one for them. You know, I gain nothing by being a jerk. So that's kind of my process in terms of how I approach the casting process, create a space for the actor to do their work. And yeah, after all these years, it feels really good to be acknowledged and stuff. But for me, it's about, you know, what keeps me going to the office every day is I freaking love what I do. Like, I just love it. There are days it's very stressful and, you know, scheduling an actor that's not available and finding an actor last minute. One thing that's very stressful was for the past few years that with COVID or being sick, doing like 4 or 5 recasts for the next day.
Yeah, everybody
So there are stressful moments for sure, but everybody has stress. Every job has stress. But for me, what's kept me going is just my love for it and my passion for it. And you know, if I lose that, there's no point in going into work. But I love going into the office every day.
I mean, I think you're the best at what you do by far. And I wanted just a couple more questions here. Daisy,
Sure.
Are there times when you know instantly you've got the right actor for the role?
Sure.
And my question on that follow-up is how soon into their audition do you know if they're good or not? Like within 2 minutes, can you tell? Like
Less than 2 minutes. Oh, it's less than 2 minutes. You can see somebody's skill even before they get to the end. You can see a skill level very quickly. Presence, charisma, skill level. Really, my favorite word to use would be complexity. Is there something going on behind the eyes?
Right.
Are they present? Are they listening to me when we're doing the scene? You can tell that you don't need 2 minutes to tell.
Right. Sherry's asking, why doesn't GH cast Eddie Cibrian for the role of Nicholas Cassadine?
Eddie, I don't believe, is interested in returning to daytime at this point.
There you go. That's the answer. Mark, thank you so much. I could talk to you for 5 hours. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we got to celebrate your Silver Circle.
Thank you so much. I was very honored that you wanted to interview me, and I was more than happy to be here.
It was great. All right, everybody. Keep watching General Hospital on ABC. Bye, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye, everybody. Thank you for being with us.